Thank you for coming today. I'm attorney Gloria Allred. I'm going to make a statement. It needs to be a little longer than usual, just simply because we need to give you the history and the truth about what's really going on here. And then Ken is going to make a statement. Jamie, his wife, is sitting next to him for support, but she will not be making a statement. And then attorney David Wall, who is associated as counsel in this case, will also be making a brief statement. And then we're going to be happy to answer any questions, should there be any. We are here today to respond to a press statement published and disseminated to the press this week on June 16th, 2010 by Nancy Seltzer on behalf of the Dugard family. In the statement, Terry Susan Probin confirmed that her daughter, Jaycee Lee Dugard, now 30 years old, is the daughter of Kenneth Lee Slayton. While we're very happy that Ms. Probin has affirmed Ken's paternity, the statement then goes on to attack Ken with what he believes are misleading and untrue statements which appear to be intentionally designed and calculated to inflame the public against him and irreparably damage his reputation. Statements, for example, that the sheriff's department interviewed Ken after her disappearance and that he showed no interest in her are completely false, and we have a witness to prove that it is false. Ken met Jaycee's mother, Terry Susan Dugard, also known as Susan, in August of 1979 at Lake Havasu at a campsite. Ken was and is a Vietnam combat veteran who was awarded a Purple Heart for his service in Vietnam. Ken and Susan Dugard had a brief relationship for approximately 1 month. Then Susan told him that she was pregnant. At that point, Ken did not know if Susan would terminate the pregnancy or give birth, and he was not sure if he was the father. The next day, Ken spoke to his friend Jamie about Susan's pregnancy. He had told Jamie that he would raise the child that he had with Susan if Susan did not want to do it, but Ken never heard from Susan, and he did not know where she was. Ken and Susan lost contact, and about 1 year later, a friend told Ken that Susan had given birth to the baby, and that the baby looked like Ken. Ken asked where Susan was, and the friend also indicated that Susan did not want Ken to know where she lived. Ken nonetheless made efforts to find Susan, but was never able to locate her. Susan never contacted Ken again to provide any information about where she was living or about Jaycee. In 1983, Ken married Jamie, a longtime friend. Kenneth and Jamie have now been married for 27 years. They have 2 children, Sarah Lee Slayton, age 25, and Brittany Lee Slayton, age 21. Ken also has 2 older children from a first marriage, a daughter and a son. The day after Jaycee disappeared, the FBI came and told Kenneth that Jaycee's mother had identified him as Jaycee's father. Many years later, an investigator for the El Dorado sheriff also came by and spoke to him about Jaycee and treated him as her father as they searched for her. In the presence of Jamie, Ken's wife, law enforcement indicated to Ken that Jaycee was probably dead, but that they would like Ken's DNA in order to identify Jaycee's remains in case her remains were ever found. Ken fully cooperated, answered all questions, and provided his DNA. When Ken first learned from law enforcement that Jaycee had been kidnapped, he was shocked and he was sick about it. He vowed to himself that if she were ever found, that he would try to be a part of her life. At the point that she was kidnapped, however, there was nothing that he could do, except hope and pray that Jaycee would be found alive and that he could then provide her with the love and support that he believed that she was entitled to enjoy. Years passed, and then recently he heard the news that Jaycee had been found and released from her 18 years of torment. Ken was disgusted and upset when he learned the gruesome details about the conditions in which she was forced to live and the predator she was forced to endure. He also felt that now that Jaycee was found, there was a new opportunity to have the relationship with Jaycee that he had never been able to have. If Kenneth had known that he was Jaycee's father when she was born, and if he had known where she was, he would have provided for her and been there for her from day one. Since that didn't happen, he wants her to know now that he is there for her and that he has another family, which includes her sisters and her stepmother and a brother, and they all want to provide love and support to her. He simply wants to provide the positive male role model for her and her children rather than the role model provided to her by Philip Garrido. This is especially important for Jaycee's 2 children because they've never had a positive male role model. They've only had the example of the sexual predator, Philip Garrido. Since the police found Jaycee, Ken has made extraordinary efforts to establish a relationship with her. He retained me as his attorney to share with the family his hope and desire to establish a relationship with Jaycee. I have spent countless hours in person and through correspondence with her prior attorney and now with her present attorney to reach out and develop a plan to establish communication between this father and his daughter. Our client has sent a personal letter to Jaycee from him, along with photos of her sisters and brother, Ken's other children, so that she would know that there is a family that cares about her and wants to support her and her children, Ken's grandchildren, in any way that they can. Those photos and letters were returned unopened. Ken, at his own expense, has gone to numerous court hearings in Placerville, California with me in the hope of talking with Jaycee and her attorney. Although Jaycee never appeared at the hearings, Ken and I were able to have a long conversation with her prior attorney to reiterate Ken's continuing desire to see Jaycee and his grandchildren and to answer any questions that he or Jaycee might have. Ken has always tried to handle this in an appropriate manner. In fact, we have never disclosed to the press that we had even filed a petition to establish paternity. However, now that the family spokesperson for Terry Susan Probin has chosen to disclose that fact in her press statement, it is now public. While we're happy that Terry has now affirmed that Ken is Jaycee's father, we're very troubled that many of the statements made by the family spokesperson in the press statement are wrong and appear to be deliberate attack on him by intentionally placing him in a false light. Ken filed a petition in court last month to establish paternity of Jaycee because we want legal proof, which is a court order establishing that Ken is the father. The mother's affirmation alone, out of court order, has no legal force and effect and does not, as a matter of law, create a legal family relationship with either Jaycee's siblings or their father. Once there is a legal determination of paternity, that declaration establishes a sibling relationship as well. He wants his children, all of Jaycee's siblings, to know that they have a sister, that they have sisters and a brother. Establishment of paternity will also be proof for his grandchildren, Jaycee's children, that he is their grandfather. We agree that DNA does not make a family. Neither does shutting a father out of his child's life make a family. For the first 11 years, he could not find Jaycee, and Ken asserts that Jaycee's mother never told them where they were living. Then Jaycee was kidnapped for 18 years. Now Jaycee is healing, and he's still unable to find her.
I was very upset at the verbal missiles and from the spokesperson that fired at me. She targeted me. I guess they're trying to kill my spirit, reputation, issuing, totally false statements. These things are over the hill. Let me make it clear that if I would have ever known that Jaycee existed, that she was my daughter, and where she was living, I would have been there. I've been a good, loving father and involved in supporting her and helping in any way that I could. The first time that I knew there was a possibility that there was a daughter was when the FBI came to my house and informed me that she'd been kidnapped and was questioning me as to where I was at. The statement that I had no interest in Jaycee is a completely false statement. Ever since I learned that the certainty that I had a daughter, I wanted to see her, protect her, and love her. Sadly, however, for Jaycee's entire life, including this day, Jaycee's been denied a father. My daughter Jaycee's 30 years old now, and I still can't find her and my grandchildren.